Welcome everybody to First Friday with Joanne Key. My name is Rowena Tuziak and I'm the Membership and Operations Manager at Writing New South Wales. I'd like to start this event by acknowledging the Gadigal and Wangal people of the Eora Nation, on whose lands Writing New South Wales is situated. I pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands where you're joining us from today. Feel free to make your own acknowledgement of country in the chat box if you'd like to do that. And now I'll introduce Joanne Key. Joanne Key is the executive producer of Riverside's National Theatre of Parramatta, responsible for artistic direction, including commissioning, presenting, touring, producing, and capacity building and developing, and supporting new works, creatives, and new ways of making theatre. Joanne is committed to inclusivity and providing pathways for artists and art workers. She is producing work that resonates with contemporary Australia and reflects our place in the world. Welcome, Joanne.
Hi, Rowena. Thank you so much for having me here, and hello to everyone here who's joined us. Of course, I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and I'm going to shout out from Parramatta clan of the Darug, and I really would like to acknowledge the richness to our culture that First Nations people have given to us in Australia.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Joanne, and welcome. Joanne, you've had an incredibly impressive career in the arts. Am I right in thinking it's 3 decades? Is that right?
Yeah, oh yeah, that sounds really like a lot. Yes. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your professional history?
Oh, professional history. It's actually quite jumped around the place. And I actually started working in the arts when I was living in the UK. So working for the Arts Council of England in the marketing, in the area that looked after marketing all across the UK, which was, really interesting. And then I came back here and I worked at the Powerhouse Museum, Sydney Opera House, Carnivale, Multicultural Arts Festival, Sydney Improvised Music Association. So it's been really varied and across different art forms as well.
Yeah, you're clearly a lover of the arts, spanning all areas.
Yeah, and run my own business at the same time, which was actually absolutely about providing opportunities for artists and capacity building. And I did that in Cockatoo Islands and in the Rocks.
Sounds amazing. So tell us, what compelled you to start a theatre company?
Well, it actually wasn't me who decided to start this theatre company. So Riverside Theatres, which has been around for quite some time, the then director, Robert Love, had thought that it was really important for Parramatta and Western Sydney to not just be a receiving house, because a lot of the work that's presented in the venue is from elsewhere. And over the years, he'd put on different productions, but really wanted to embed that into the DNA of the organisation. So he decided to create a cheekily named National Theatre of Parramatta, and with that to be producing at the forefront was producing works of, the highest possible standard that had the capacity to tour and be seen around Greater Sydney, around the country, and we're actually moving our work globally as well. So I think that is a great thing to be able to do that. And then from that, we're able as well to provide opportunity to artists in Western Sydney. And I mean, it's no secret that it actually has been the poorer cousin of the inner city.
We will dig into the detail of that shortly. Just a broad question for you to start with. Why is theatre important? What's its role in society?
What's its role? I think theatre is important more so than ever because it gives you a safe space to explore ideas. And whilst theatre can range in so many forms, from just straight entertaining through to really challenging, I think it's a really great place to see ideas, the world, to be able to talk about them. And then, if you like them or if you don't like them, you can do something about it. And we're now seeing generations of people coming through who are going, actually, I think the world should look a little bit different from what I've been seeing. And now they're taking control of their own destinies and going, I'm going to create work. And now there are more avenues where that is actually possible to have that work presented. And I think that's really exciting because it's a constantly evolving art form. A performance is never the same and it responds to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Just an extension on that question, what would you consider to be the responsibility of a theatre company or a theatre director? Is it a responsibility to their audience or to affect social change or to support artists?
I think that depends on the company because all companies are founded on different
Principles.
Yeah, different principles. For me, I think what is really important is supporting and nurturing artists and creatives and being able to tell really authentic and genuine stories that then connect with audiences. So audiences are really very important to me because they're what we that is who we want to connect with. And someone actually said something really interesting because we always talk about audiences, but actually audiences are made up of individuals. And I think that's a really interesting point to bear in mind, that we love to be able to make people connect with the work that we do.
Yeah, amazing. Can you think of any, companies or theatre directors that are doing really good work in that particular area, of course, besides your good selves? And it could be internationally, not necessarily in Australia.
Yeah. We're doing work at the moment with a company in the UK, Javad Alipur company. And to me, that's really exciting because that is making a lot of commentary on social and political and also contemporary technology. So that is a really great company. I mean, there's so many people now who are invested in being authentic and genuine and wanting to reach out to people. So I think it's a great shift. I think there's a lot more work needs to be done, but it's a really good starting point and a tipping point I think we're at.
Definitely. I'm going to ask you some more questions about that shortly. Now, you mentioned the naming of Riverside's National Theatre of Parramatta. And I guess my question to you is, where do you see Riverside's National Theatre of Parramatta fitting into the world of Australian theatre companies? It's called a national theatre, but of course it has a very local connection.
Yeah, well, I really believe in that. What is local and genuine is actually global. So stories that often we connect with. So, for example, we did work of James Lazzi, and it's about a Lebanese. One of the plays was about Lebanese background and his faith, and that is a Christian faith. But I actually had people in the audience who were like Anglo-Australian who connected with that and who had a Catholic background. So I think that by taking something that is very, like very much at its core, stories that we have within us can actually resonate with other people who have similar experiences, but it might not necessarily be in exactly the same package.
Yeah, absolutely. Something about that specificity of the story has actually a very general and global feel to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Riverside's National Theatre of Parramatta, please tell me if there's a shortened version of that I can use.
NTFP, we go NTFP, it's too long.
Yeah. You played such an important role in getting diverse voices on stage. We'll talk about some of those specific productions that have come out of that shortly, but could you talk to us about, just give us an overview of some of the programs that you have or have had in the past supporting local writers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have one program that I started out at the very beginning. The company was launched at the end of 2015, and in 2016, I ran a program which was called Page to Stage, and that's actually about getting writers from the page onto the stage, because at that time, many writers in Western Sydney, particularly, everyone would come out and do a kind of like a charitable, let's give you a writing course, but then it would be see you later at the end of it. So our intent was actually to nurture and give people opportunities. And so from that, we've run 2 of them now, because actually they are really intensive. Donna Rabella is running them. And the last one, it was like a university degree. It ran over 10 months.
Oh, wow. It's intensive.
Yeah, so really, really intense. And from that, people have gone on to have their productions made and have also had commissions. So we're really excited about the breadth of talent that there is there. And a spin-off of that, realising that there was so much interest in playwriting, was our Playwrights of Parramatta, where we actually have people come to shows, and then afterwards you get to speak to usually the director or the playwright to discuss the craft of playwriting. And I'm really excited. In 23, we're going to be launching soon something called Staging the World, and that's actually going to be a mentorship program with international artists. So that's just a range, a snapshot. We also have practical hands-on creative futures programs where people get to work in the theatre as well.
Right.
So we're very much about building craft and skills for our artists.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you also have that fabulous podcast as well.
I am so excited about the podcast.
Yeah.
So if you haven't heard it, it's called Staging the Nation. Dino Dimitriadis is our host on that. And we talk to people from, like Wesley Enoch, Alana Valentine, Shakti, and they're so beautiful and personal, because Dino is a director, and the insights that you can actually hear the playwrights pause and think really deeply about their answers, and some of the questions are incredibly challenging. So for Shakti, for those of you who might not know, did this huge massive production with Belvar, Counting and Cracking, which is about to go overseas, and to do that work at it's not the beginning of his career, because he's been around, but to do something of that scale, often you only get one crack at that kind of work. So it's just really interesting, Dino's asking those kind of questions about, how Shakti feels about his creating new work and how that fits, and how the actual work evolved. And that is a fascinating story, because it actually became larger than himself in the writing of that.
Yeah, if you're a playwright, or if you're a writer, or indeed just an audience goer, absolutely listen to that podcast. You'll really enjoy it. Okay, so we said we'd talk about productions now. So you've had some incredibly successful and well-received productions. So you've talked about James Alassi's Queen Fatima, and also Lady Tabuli.
Yes.
And Untuly Felicia King's White Pearl.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about those productions, or any other productions that you're particularly proud of?
Well, I am really proud of White Pearl, because at that time, Felicia was a relative, she was pretty much an unknown playwright, and that was her first work. And I had seen that at a playwriting festival, Australian Plays. I'm not sure what it's called. I think it's Australian Plays Transforms now. And they had done a reading of it, and I had thought, oh, I love that, but we wouldn't be able to do it because it's too large for us. It's got 7 characters in it. And then an opportunity arose to partner up with Sydney Theatre Company on that. And I'm so thrilled, because we picked it up, and then after we decided we were programming it, the Royal Court in London actually went main stage, wanted it as well. So they did a different production than we did, but I think it just speaks to how significant that work is. And yeah, I'm really proud that we were able to work with Felicia at that early stage and to amplify that. And it's been produced around the world, not necessarily, it hasn't been our productions, but in Australia, it has been our production, and it's gone to pretty much most capital cities in Australia.
Yeah, I can see why you'd be proud of that one. That's so impressive. What a great story. Can you tell us why you think that work resonates so much with audiences?
Oh yeah, but I've been thinking about that, and I think that what is really great about it, it actually has a good story to begin with, and so within that story there are so many layers and so many different themes that, but they're able to be woven into it because there's such a strong line going through it anyway. And I love the fact that it was looking at different Asian cultures. So for those of you who might not know the story, it's about a cosmetics company who does skin whitening cream, which is still a very common thing in countries where people have dark skins. And there's a social media explosion about a politically incorrect advertising thing, and then it all goes south, and then there's a whole cancel culture coming into it as well. So I think that just that whole cleverness and that sort of that small narrowness in looking at that cosmetics company, but then it's a global thing, is just such a beautiful example of playwriting.
Yeah, great. Absolutely try and get a chance to see it if you can. Maybe pop over to London, if not locally. I think you might need to rename your company to Riverside's International Theatre of Parramatta.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to put that daggy joke in there. How receptive are audiences to diverse writers and works these days?
Oh, I mean, it is a little bit on point at the moment, shall we say? So that most theatre companies are absolutely wanting to program diverse writers into their programs. I think that the appetite for it is really different according to the companies and according to their audiences. I think that for, the approach of some companies, if you gently bring the audience into experience the works, that's a really good strategy to get people on board, so it's just not all of a sudden it's in your face. I mean, some people, I know there have been different works, if they're very specific to a culture, that like I've had these discussions with playwrights and directors about who is actually the work for. Is it for people of colour or from diverse backgrounds, like, because it can be about gender or sexuality, but who is that for? Is that the audience, or is the audience actually the mainstream theatre audience who we might want to show different ideas, or are we actually trying to build another or another type of audience totally? So really, I think there's a lot of complexity in that.
Do you think Australian theatre is diverse enough? Maybe I know what the answer is, but specifically, where are the gaps?
I think we're getting there, and I think that a good example is this week I go to see a lot of shows, and this week I went, oh, I'm going to see a show on Tuesday night. It was Terrific, which was a young person's show. And then last night I went to Topcoat, so Michelle Law's piece. And tonight I'm going to see something at Belvoir 25, which is also an Asian piece, a mythology piece. And on Saturday I'm going to see Merlin's Golden Blood. So I think
Wow.
that is really interesting, that the investment that has been made in supporting artists from diverse backgrounds is having an impact. And I would also say as well that I've seen this because I also sit on some panels for playwriting, and the investment that has been made in First Nations work and the results and the quality of the work is just it's just really exciting, because you can actually that these opportunities are coming through. I think it's really important when we're presenting all these works that the companies that are putting them on really need to invest in ensuring that the artists that they work with have the opportunities to really develop their craft and that they're supported.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the challenges around that? And what do we still need to do, and what can we do you think?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges in any group that has been underrepresented is when people decide that they want to program their work, is actually ensuring that those artists are supported and that their work is only put on or they are giving those opportunities when they are ready, or that they are fully supported to do that, because it does no one any favors to put on half-baked or put an artist who is good but maybe not ready in a position where they can't shine.
Yeah, absolutely. There must be a level of risk in putting on new work. So what do you consider when you're putting on new works, and how are those decisions made?
There absolutely is a lot of risk with new work, and new work takes so much more investment in time and resources than an existing play. So it's really easy. If you take a Shakespeare, you know what you're getting, you know what the quality of the writing is. With new work, it shifts and changes all the way through, and you really need to support that and the process and how it will look. That's why there are very specifically some directors who are brilliant with new writing, because they they absorb that responsibility and that challenge. You can't always know. I mean, we try as much as we can by doing creative developments and getting them to a point where we go, okay, then the next step is then we will put on that work, because we're confident from seeing that last creative development that it's a work that's ready to go. But I really believe that we don't put enough creative development into our process I think it would benefit artists more if they actually had more time to sit with their work and work on their craft more.
Gestate and hone their skills. Yeah,
like sometimes you put it in a drawer and then you come back to it. And
completely.
All of that kind of stuff. I think that's really important to encourage people to be able to do that, and not just to be in a hurry to go, oh, I can get my play on. I think it's good to really work on your craft.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you do stage the work, what's the relationship between the writer and the dramaturg like, and how much involvement does the writer have once it's going to the stage?
That will very much depend on the writer and the director, and if there's a dramaturg involved. Directors, as our playwrights, there are so many different personalities and different ways of working. Some directors are not keen to have the writer in the room. Others are. So I couldn't really, there's not a blanket rule.
Yeah, fair enough. Which theatre makers, so it could be directors or writers or performers, inspire you and your work? And it could be Australia or internationally.
Yeah, I think, because I'm working with him again, and I've worked with him a few times. Dimitriadis, I think, is a really interesting director, and the way his been pushing the boundaries of storytelling. I think what Kip Williams did with Dorian Gray really was a true watershed moment in theatre. So for those of you, I think most of you probably know what he did, but he worked with camera people, and there's a lot of video, and for all intents and purposes, it's a one-person show, but it's not, because it's just so complicated, and the use of technology is really quite remarkable. So there's so many more, and internationally there are people whose work I follow, and I'm always interested to see what they're doing. Yeah.
Don't forget, audience members, to pop your questions in the chat box for the Q&A at the end of this event. Joanne, the arts have suffered through a sustained reduction in funding, and then of course COVID. So why is government funding for the arts important, and what do you see as the consequences of inadequate funding in the arts?
I think the arts is really important, because for our society, for us to be able to think creatively, it gives us a soul and inspiration for our lives. And that now the correlation between that and mental health is being more strongly demonstrated, that actually what realistically are small investments that they make into the arts compared to other industries has a much more far-reaching impact through what it does to people's well-being.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than has it really been considered before. And that's also not to mention what a huge economic driver it is for people, for economies as well. And also for people who work within the arts, how wonderful to be able to work in areas of creativity. And, for the audiences, it's also great to be able to have that inspirational opportunities.
Yeah, I guess it also says how a society values arts and cultures by how much it's funded. So I hope the funding bodies are listening. So we did see that in general, the arts were leaders in responding creatively and responsibly to the public health crisis. What long-term outcomes do you see from this? So we've touched on it there. Can you see some specific positive outcomes?
I think, I'm going to start with maybe things that were not so good. And in the performing arts, a lot of people actually have walked away from the sector.
Yeah.
And I think that is a real shame, but it has put on display for everyone the really tenuous nature of working on contracts and part-time, and how stressful that can be. I'm hoping that from this, actually a kinder way of working and supporting people who work in this sector can be sourced and will be put in place. I think some of the things we realise too in ways of working, that it is possible to do things digitally, and we did lots of creative developments and workshops online. And whilst I think they're never a replacement for in real life opportunities, I think it's also good because the connectivity that you have internationally is quite remarkable. When we did our play Things Hidden, which was a creative development internationally, what was really amazing was the team here in Sydney were working on it during the day, and then overnight it went to the UK, and then we got input from our creative partners in the UK. So that's really, really exciting.
You absolutely are going global. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, the work premieres in Manchester and London in October.
Amazing. Wonderful. What makes for a sustainable career as a playwright? Is there such a thing?
Oh, it's really interesting, because if you get that one big hit, you can actually get royalties off it for a really long time. So, for example, they say that Louis Nara's work is a really good example of that, especially when people, the royalties for the rights to perform it ongoing when there's that interest. So if you hit on a classic, that is a really amazing opportunity for you to keep on going with your career. Different people have different models. So, for example, Jane Harrison, who wrote Stolen, always worked both as a playwright but then had other jobs. And so for some people, they like that because it brings richness of other experiences. But for other playwrights, and they're full-time as playwrights, and then that also gives another focus. So I guess, again, it's, as a career, there are, again, many different pathways as there are many different people.
And do you have any tips for aspiring playwrights?
I think it's really important to see work. And when you see work, to actually think about what are the things that made it good and maybe the things that made it not so good. And I think having the building blocks are also good. And then once you have the building blocks, you can actually throw them away. But it's good to actually know what those building blocks were. At the moment, I'm also trying to encourage creativity that's not in a linear Western framework of a playwright sits in a room on their own and then just writes a play. So sort of encouraging people that might be wanting to create in a group or in an improvised or a more devised way, and just seeing where that lands as well.
Yeah. How can playwrights, so you sort of touched on playwrights working together, how can playwrights support community?
Okay, so I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for what we do. And we actually believe that within the performing arts, actually your strength often comes from your community and having peers, like-minded peers. So we have things like Creative Hello networking events where people get to meet other, aspiring directors, actors, playwrights. Sometimes we do reads of really early stage work. And with all the different programs that we've had, like the Page to Stage or the Playwrights of Parramatta, we try to encourage those groups of people to keep in touch and form their own networking groups to support each other. Because you'll often find that it is within Australia, it is a fairly small scene, and that by actually entering into one world, there's a whole group of people that you can access.
Yeah, right. What type of works are you interested in seeing, and who takes part in the decision-making process around that? Because I'm sure we've got some very eager playwrights in the audience today.
I am interested in works that are contemporary, that are of today. I don't go out of my way to do this, but it does appear that I favour works that are quite bold in content. So I don't necessarily think about it when I'm looking at them, but things that are fresh, like they might have a freshness. And when I look back in retrospect, I go, oh, okay, so there is a pattern there that I'm looking at plays that explore new ideas or, like very fresh ways of looking at things.
Yeah, right. And how far ahead are you thinking when you read new works?
Oh,
in terms of programming and that sort of thing.
Okay, so programming is really tricky, and I think very much in the long term, and I don't think about a new work in terms of I commission it today and it's ready by this date, because there are a lot of curves on the road to creating a work for different people, and for different people it's different. So very much I am looking at what I can best do to support the best outcome for those works, and the timescale is actually quite open.
Yeah, okay. And if someone did want to approach your company with new work, how would they go about doing that? Or more broadly, how does a playwright get their work seen?
Okay, so I would say that most of the programs that we do, which are capacity building, are very much focused on Western Sydney artists. So if you are from Western Sydney, or it maybe you're working in Western Sydney, or you were born in Western Sydney, we have opportunities where we have open days and auditions, and again we have these networking nights. So we're very much, myself and I've got quite a small team, we're very visible and we're at our events, and we encourage people to chat with us or to attend those open auditions, and not the open auditions, but the pitch sessions, and to talk to us or to be engaged in the programs that we run. What I would also say is that if you're not from Western Sydney, but you want to be, you want me to see your work, invitations to your work is something else. So from the back of me being invited to plays where I haven't known the director, I've gone on to employ directors. So also from my open sessions, I've gone on to program some of those works in the main stage. But you also have to remember that there are many more people wanting to get their work up than we actually have capacity to present. So often we might also give advice about where work is best placed to be seen as well, where we're not, but we don't have that capacity to actually present everyone's work. But every company has some kind of open opportunity, you know, Griffin does, Belvoir does, I think STC, yeah, every company has opportunities to send through work, or actually to get people on their team invited to shows. And I think the best way is actually when you see examples of what that person does, that gives you a really good indication of whether you are interested in their work. And often too, it might be a long-term thing, that you might see someone's work and then you might reach out to them and then just start a conversation. So it would very rarely go, I see something, then I go immediately, I'm going to present it or cast it. But hey, timing is everything. And sometimes you can be in the right place at the right time as well. People can send us scripts, but I can't promise that I have time to read them. We're such a small team. And I think that's the same for everyone. So that's why we actually put more weight on Western Sydney artists where we are and from where we're funded. But certainly, you know, I and, you know, other people I know who look for work are always interested in seeing new voices and new writers. And there's lots of opportunities to be involved in workshops and other capacity building programs across the board in the arts.
And also, I suppose, just be a really good supporter of other playwrights as well, and go and see theatre.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a really great way to be involved.
Yeah. All right, we're coming to my final question. So I'm just reminding the audience, do pop your questions in the chat box, as we will commence those questions shortly. So Joanne, what productions are you looking forward to seeing? Which companies should we keep an eye on, and who are the emerging playwrights that we should watch out for? Well,
this weekend I'm going to see, no, I think her last name, it's Merlin. It's actually on at Griffin, and I'm pretty sure the title is Golden Blood. I'm really looking forward to that because I've worked with Merlin in the past, and she is an artist from Brisbane, but I know her work, when I've read it, I've been really engaged and I want to see and hear more. So I'm really super excited to be able to see her work. I mean, Felicia, of course, actually Felicia King, she's writing and she's got such wonderful, complex storytelling in her work. So she's definitely one to keep an eye out for. Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Joanne. Now I have a couple more questions that I could ask, but I might see if we've got some questions from the audience. It looks like we do. I've got a question here from Charlene. Charlene is asking, in terms of diversity, many older Australians from CALD backgrounds are overlooked. Should there be a specific program in the arts to develop plays from these people, especially if English is not their first language and they are not in the arts sector?
I don't discriminate off people for age. So, like I'm interested in all sorts of people, and I think actually inclusivity and diversity is everything, like it includes age as well. So it's and to the point about language and programs for it, I think actually some people who work with different groups of people who might be first generation or English is not their first language actually encourage, like particularly in the areas of writing. I know that there's Lost in Books in Fairfield are running amazing community programs to engage with people. Curious Works as well at Pusula, really very much engaged with community and outreach, and actually, putting a hand out to people from communities that might not think that writing was for them. So I think that there are areas where this is available, but and the people within them probably know more about them for those specific communities.
Some great recommendations there, Charlene, for you to take a look at. I have a question here from Anna. Anna would like to know how you engage your audience to get feedback. How do you find out about what people care about or are interested in?
Okay, so for our shows, we do follow-up questionnaires, which I know is a bit annoying because everyone does questionnaires at the drop of a hat these days. You get on a phone call and then you've got a questionnaire and you're text messaging. But we do like to get that kind of feedback, but we also are very around and present. So we talk to people, and I know that our Australian playwrights and directors actually talk to our audiences as well and get feedback. And for me, that is really valuable to know what our community thinks about the work that we produce and what they're interested in. I actually want to engage more with different communities. And having said that is tricky with the resources we have, because it's a very labor intensive thing to do, to go out to different communities, but it's something that's very much trying to work out ways to engage more.
Is your audience quite diverse?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So if you look at our audience compared to, say, if you went to one of the main stage company shows in the inner city, our audience is younger and also from very different backgrounds.
Yeah. And do you have, I mean, I don't know if you track this or not, but do you have a sense of how much of, what sort of percentage of people are local to Parramatta or surrounds?
Yeah, we actually have quite a high percentage of people who are local. So I can't remember the exact stats off the top of my head.
No, of course.
But we're not an organisation making work in Western Sydney that's going, we just only, we want inner city audiences. That would be crazy. We actually want audiences, it's great if inner city audiences come to our work, but we very much are super happy to have Western Sydney audiences and, the surrounds.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I have a question here from Paris. So Paris is interested to hear more about your Page to Stage program. So please do elaborate on that. She has some specific questions, which I'll ask as well, but in the context of that, perhaps you can elaborate. So performance poetry is a particular interest of mine. However, there doesn't seem to be much guidance or training around developing in the craft apart from open mics and poetry nights. I'm referring more to the development of theatrical poetic monologues as opposed to shorter slam poetry recitals. Is this something your theatre company has explored before or would consider exploring in the future? I haven't yet found a place where theatrical performance poetry has had a home outside of independent one-person shows.
Yeah. I actually have been thinking about this for quite a few years, pre-COVID, and have been wanting to engage in this area. I found a really amazing model in the UK, and I can't remember. Oh, it's called Gig Theatre.
Okay.
And it's actually, it doesn't have to be, but the example I saw was actually more in a tent with an audience. It was a 360-degree audience, and it was like gorgeous and interactive, and it was building on those kind of forms. I think that it hasn't, I think it's like in a more early stage in the UK, and I haven't really seen it over here. Like, I was trying to engage so I could get that sort of thing happening over here. I agree that there hasn't been that much opportunity to take it to the next step. But I'm interested to hear about ideas on that. So, you know, if you, we'll be doing our next open, I think we're going to call them something else because I think it's an ideas exchange, really. But we'll probably do another one now in September. We're aiming to do it twice a year so that we can talk to people and hear about ideas and explore them. So yeah, I am very interested in that.
Great, that's lots of useful information there for you, Paris. I have another COVID-related question. I know we're sick of that C word, but when we were on stay-at-home orders and we were stuck in lockdown, so many people turn to the arts as an outlet, but also as a balm. Joanne, did you have any particular arts sources of inspiration and healing, I guess, during that time, and entertainment?
I have to say, because we're working at Riverside with the theatre, we had to do so much pivoting, I cannot tell you.
Yeah.
And so many Zoom meetings and emergency meetings and replanning and all the rest of it, that I spent a hell of a lot of time during the day looking at a screen and having lots of meetings. So I wasn't really wanting to spend a lot of my leisure time looking at it. Having said that, if there was something that I got really hooked on, I did get totally hooked on K-drama during that time, and really found it interesting how they that like as an art form, that what craft in terms of, you know, putting together those cliffhangers and just like weaving in really interesting parts of culture into, you know, some of them, you know, there were varying degrees of them, but there was some were philosophical as well. So I found that really interesting. And, you know, there were some things that were maybe a little bit more fun. I was following Dollar Bin Darlings, who Johnny was doing dance parties. So that was, you know, that was a little bit of fun as well.
Yeah, I think we all did a lot of dancing in our houses during lockdown. Joanne, you talked about the pivot that, you know, everyone had to do, and certainly arts organisations had to do during that time. Can you talk us through just what the experience of that was like, and you know, how, I guess, how stressful it was, and what kind of, how your decision making worked around that, and who you looked to for guidance, whether you did or you didn't, I don't know. What was that time like?
Actually, we were discussing it the other day that now, in the time we're in, it seems quite easy to have forgotten how scary that was. And
Really
actually,
scary.
it was the unknown, and maybe not going out and being, people were quite fearful within that framework. So what did we do, and what did we? I mean, we had to rethink whether or not we could present shows, whether it was safe, whether it was safe for the actors and creatives, whether it was safe for the audiences, whether audiences would even come. Riverside itself has one of the largest programs for school groups coming into the
Yeah.
theatre, so that absolutely was decimated. And there was a lot of rescheduling going on. And I know some poor people had their shows, maybe rescheduled 3 times. And that was incredibly hard. I know it's been incredibly hard for artists that, one said to me, I can't take that job because I can't possibly think about having another show cancelled on me. Yeah. So crazy times.
Yeah, crazy and stressful times.
Yeah.
And again, as I said earlier, the arts will lead us in navigating that space. All right, last chance for questions if you want to post them in the chat box. We do have another question about advice for budding playwrights. You kind of touched on this before already. Certainly we run our own courses. For example, Hilary Bell's a play in 2 days that was on last weekend. Do you know of any particular writing groups or courses or something on the playwriting scene that people should be getting themselves to?
I have to say, I'm really sorry. I don't know. But I would say if you're running something by Hilary Bell is amazing. And you can learn a lot from someone like Hilary. So yeah, I would look out for those courses with people who are playwrights that have such a wealth of experience and knowledge. It's always good to build your craft.
Yeah, absolutely. And they could, of course, come to your work in progress night, which is the creative.
Well, we've been playing around with different models. We've been doing something at the moment called Sarah's Salon. And hang on a second, I'm just going to ask.
So, you've got someone in the background.
Sorry, I've just gone, just wait for 5 minutes, please. Yeah. So the Sarah Salon is actually something new that we've been playing around with, and it's not exclusive to Western Sydney people to come along to, but it's really fun because it's that tradition of we provide really nice food, and it's a really relaxed setting. We do it actually in the foyer of the theatre, not in the theatre. I'm not sure now when we'll probably do our next one, but that one is where we're having people giving us little examples of work that they've got an idea about, like a little sketch of an idea or a little reading. So I think that is very exciting.
Yeah, wonderful. You had me at food.
The food is really good. Yeah.
All right. Look, I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you. Thank you so much, Joanne, for joining us. It's been a wonderful discussion and very enlightening. And thanks to our audience for being here for First Friday. The next First Friday will be held on Friday, the 5th of August, with Amy Sandbrook, Creative Director of Varuna, and Vici Stewart, Executive Director of Varuna, the National Writers' House. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at another Writing New South Wales event very soon.
Yeah, and can I just add really quickly, I hope you get to see something at Riverside and come to one of National Theatre of Parramatta's works.
Absolutely, and follow on socials and sign up to e-newsletters so you don't miss out on those upcoming shows.
Okay, and opportunities, because we actually are more focused on creatives in our newsletters than audience.
Absolutely. This is your opportunity. Don't miss out. All right. Thanks so much, Joanne. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you,
And we'll
Rowena.
see you
Thanks so
next
much.
time.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.